Today, I'm so happy to see everyone back on the channel. We're continuing the story of Ly Hoai Ca, where old wounds, buried pain, and fragile hopes are slowly finding their way to healing. In the previous episode, after what felt like endless storms with no escape, Hoai Ca and Hung's mother were finally able to sit down together. The woman who once pushed Hoai Ca to the brink of death now knelt before her, sincerely admitting her mistakes and asking for a chance to make things right. It wasn't an easy moment to face, but Hoai Ca chose the strongest path, standing tall before her past instead of running away or clinging to resentment. Because of Hung, and because of the little life growing inside her, she opened her heart and agreed to give his mother another chance. Not because the pain had vanished, but because she believed forgiveness could also protect the family she was trying to build. From that moment on, Hung's mother seemed like a completely different person. She cared for Hoai Ca in every small detail, preparing meals, keeping her from lifting anything heavy. Tony was spoiled like a real grandchild. Wherever she went, she carried him along. Her devotion changed the atmosphere in the house lighter, warmer, and most importantly, Hoai Ca no longer felt fear when she saw her. Hung, the one stuck between his mother and his wife for so long, finally breathed in relief. Seeing Hoai Ca being loved, protected, and truly cared for, it felt like a weight was lifted off his chest, one he had been carrying for far too long. Tiu-san, Hung's younger sister, also returned home after months of being upset with their mother. She jumped in to help, joining everyone in piecing together the home that once seemed beyond saving. Miha, who always treated Hoai Ca like her own daughter, watched the scene with teary eyes. She said, "I just wish the girl had been treated this kindly from the beginning." And right when things were finally peaceful, Hung's mother revealed something that left the whole house silent. She wanted to remake the wedding for Hung and Hoai Ca, a real wedding, proper and complete, to replace the hurt and the missing pieces from years before. That's where the previous episode ended, opening today's chapter, where Hoai Ca prepares to walk into the very first complete wedding of her life. Stay until the end of the video so you don't miss any important moment in this special journey. That evening, the small wooden house at the end of the village glowed with a warm yellow light, as if it were holding the whole family gently in its arms. The night wind slipped through the cracks in the door, but it couldn't chase away the sense of togetherness spreading across the room. Around the dinner tray set in the middle of the house, everyone sat in a circle. Hoai Ca was in the center, her hair tied neatly behind her, one hand instinctively resting on her belly like any young mother-to-be. Hung sat close beside her, glancing at her now and then just to make sure she was okay. Miha and Hung's mother sat opposite each other, talking softly. The sound of their laughter warmed the entire room. Tiu-san patiently fed little Tony, who looked around at everyone with wide, curious eyes. And Hoai Ca's older foster brother had just driven home in time, his shirt still dusty from the road, but his face bright with shared happiness. The meal was simple, nothing fancy, but it carried the feeling of a real family. Hoai Ca looked at every face, listened to every laugh, and felt her heart soften. After everything she had been through, this peaceful moment was something she wanted to hold on to forever, afraid that if she loosened her grip, it would disappear. In the middle of the meal, Hung's mother suddenly set her chopsticks down. The sound was small, but enough to silence the entire table. She took a deep breath and looked at Hoai Ca, not with the harshness of the past, but with the gentle eyes of a mother who finally understood far too much. "I have something I want to say." No one spoke. Hung straightened unconsciously, and Hoai Ca placed a hand on her belly as if to steady herself. Hung's mother began. "The other day, you two said you made a small meal together to count as your wedding." Hoài Ca and Hùng exchanged an embarrassed glance and nodded. They knew that little ceremony was nothing more than a quiet milestone, something they clung to while surviving one storm after another. She continued softly. But that wasn't a real wedding. No dress, no relatives, no one officiating. And I made too many mistakes. I didn't fulfill my duty as a mother. Her voice sank, and the guilt she had been hiding for days showed clearly in her eyes. Now that Ca is pregnant, I want to hold a proper wedding for the two of you. Hoài Ca froze. She almost dropped her spoon, eyes widening. Mom, I feel embarrassed. Hùng immediately waved his hands. Mom, we already live together. Having another wedding would cost too much. But she shook her head firmly. It's not about money. It's about making things right. Last time, I wasn't there. This time, I want to personally walk my daughter-in-law into this family properly, before my grandchild is born. A long silence washed over the dinner. Not tension, but a tightness in the chest, like someone had touched the softest place in everyone's heart. Miha smiled, her eyes gentle. She's right, Ca. You deserve a proper wedding. Hùng nodded, his voice steady. My sister has suffered enough. If she's happy now, then the wedding must be done. Tusin leaned on the table, full of energy as always. I'll do your makeup, sis. I'll make you the prettiest bride ever. CEO Hai, who was drinking water, burst into laughter. Then I'll take care of photos, backdrop, decorations, all of it. Voices overlapping, everyone claiming a part of the preparation, and Tony clapping while babbling, it created a scene so warm that Hoài Ca couldn't hold herself back. She smiled while her eyes grew hot, tears falling without her even noticing. All she knew was that every word spoken here was something she once believed she would never have. She looked around the table. People who had once hurt each other, misunderstood each other, grown distant, now sitting together as if nothing had ever torn them apart. Hoài Ca lowered her head slightly and whispered, "Then, I'll listen to Mom." Hung's mother immediately reached out, holding Hoài Ca's hand in both of hers, squeezing gently with overwhelming emotion. Thank you for giving me the chance to make things right. Her voice trembled, but her eyes shone as if she had finally set down a burden she had carried her entire life. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, a thin layer of mist drifted down from the mountains, covering the front porch in a soft white haze. The air was so clear that the distant sound of roosters crowing echoed sharply with every rhythm. In that quiet, serene scene, the small wooden house slowly awakened like a warm nest greeting its most important day. Without needing reminders, everyone naturally began their tasks. A lively energy spread across the yard, giving the sense that even the sky itself was rushing to celebrate with them. In the kitchen, Miha had lit the fire at dawn. She bent down to arrange each piece of firewood, blowing gently until the flames caught, then adjusted the pot of broth warming on the stove. The smell of fried shallots floated through the air, blending with the scent of burning wood, a special kind of warmth found only in homes that have endured years of rain and sun, yet never lost their tenderness. As she cooked, she whispered through her list of dishes, calculating everything with care. There was always a hint of worry in her eyes, as if missing even a slice of ginger or a handful of greens would lessen the joy of this day. Outside, Hung's mother was just as busy. Standing on a small wooden stool, she carefully hung each strip of decoration, adjusting them until perfectly straight, then stepped back to check the spacing. Sometimes she paused, staring quietly at the yard as though picturing Hoài Ca walking out in her white wedding dress. Her phone kept buzzing, and each time she picked up with a cheerful voice. Today is Hung and Ca's wedding. Remember to come early, okay? It was hard to believe this was the same woman who once caused so much chaos. Today, She was simply a mother trying to make things right with all her heart. In the middle of the yard, Anh-ha was setting up the canopy. He tied ropes, hammered stakes, and pulled the fabric roof up with enough strength for the veins in his arms to show. Sweat soaked his collar, yet he smiled every time he glanced at Hoài Ca, the smile of an older brother who had watched his sister endure too much hardship. In his eyes were pride, affection, and a quiet ache for all she had survived. In one corner, CEO Hai opened his backpack, pulling out cameras, lights, lenses, and battery packs. He tested each angle, adjusted every light, and kept stepping back to check his framing. Whenever he found a beautiful shot, he shouted, "This angle is perfect on camera." He worked with such passion that it was obvious he wanted this wedding to look just as magical as a film set. Inside the house, Tucson zipped around like a gust of wind. Clutching the wedding dress to her chest, she ran outside to check the whiteness under the sunlight, then dashed back inside to inspect the veil. Every now and then, she stood before Hoài Ca, shaking her head rapidly. "Stand still so I can fix the hem of the dress." She was so busy no one knew if she had even taken a breath, until Miha scolded gently. "Slow down a bit, or you'll fall." Tony, meanwhile, was the perfect, curious toddler. He crawled after everyone's feet, babbling happily as if he, too, were part of the preparations. Whenever he got tired, he plopped onto the ground, propping himself with his tiny hands, watching the adults work with an adorably confused expression. To him, the morning must have looked like an exciting performance. As for Hung, he barely left Hoài Ca's side the whole morning. He walked ahead to block the sun, walked behind to steady her step. If she moved a little too quickly, he immediately frowned and asked, "Are you tired?" And if anyone tried to hand her even the smallest task, he intercepted with a firm, "I'll do it." To Hung, nothing mattered more than the safety of Hoài Ca and their unborn child. The entire yard slowly filled with life, the hammer tapping against stakes, pots clanking, voices calling back and forth, a child babbling. Everything blended into a vibrant, ordinary yet precious morning. To Hoài Ca, this wasn't just wedding preparation. It felt like a home, something she once feared she would never truly have. There was no grand stage, no lavish wedding tent, no blaring music, no long line of guests. Just a few rows of wooden chairs, some pots of flowers, a white curtain fluttering in the wind, and the familiar faces of people who had stood by them through their darkest days. In that simple setting, Hoài Ca appeared in a white áo dye that Tucson had borrowed with great effort. The dress wasn't extravagant, but on her, it looked pure and graceful. Her baby bump showed gently beneath the soft fabric, making her look even more tender, like a quiet promise of a peaceful future. Hung stood across from her, his white shirt neatly ironed, hair smoothly combed. He wasn't dressed extravagantly, but his eyes held the sincerity of a man who had weathered countless storms to keep one person safe. They stood in front of the wooden porch, the place where they had once fought pain, cried, and held each other during the hardest days. Today, in that same place, they stood again, but with a new beginning. Hung's mother walked forward and took Hoài Ca's hand. Her hand trembled slightly, but her voice was clear, each word carrying the weight of her heart. "I officially give you to Hung, as a real mother should." In that moment, all her usual sternness disappeared, replaced with respect, remorse, and a deep, unspoken pride. Beside her, Miha quietly dabbed her eyes. She had seen Hoài Ca through every hardship, held her when she collapsed, helped her when she had nothing left. And today, seeing her being given away properly softened her heart completely. Hung held Hoài Ca's hand, squeezing it gently as if declaring to the whole world that this was the person he would protect for life. His voice was deep and warm, the kind that calmed anyone instantly. CA, this time, it's a real wedding. I promise, for the rest of my life, I'll love you just like today. Hoài Ca looked up at him, her eyes glistening. Inside them were things she once never dared dream of. Her voice was soft but certain. Me too. Thank you for giving me a family. Paper confetti burst in the air, simple, but filled with genuine joy. Laughter blended together, ringing across the yard as if blowing away every shadow of the past. Tony, startled by the sound, crawled over, grabbing his parents' legs and looking up with a wide smile, babbling nonsense that made everyone laugh. That tiny, adorable moment felt like the perfect period at the end of a beautiful sentence. And there, in the gentle morning light, surrounded by familiar walls and beloved faces, Hoài Ca stood hand in hand with Hùng, knowing deep in her heart that she had finally touched the happiness she once believed could never belong to her. That afternoon, the entire mountainside seemed to put on a new coat. The wind drifted down from above, carrying the scent of fresh grass after the midday sun, cool, but not cold, gentle like a soft hand brushing against tired cheeks. The golden light of the setting sun leaned across the small wooden house, touching each old grain of wood and making them glow with a strange, comforting warmth. No glamour, no loud music, no lavish rituals. Yet the peace of that moment sank deeper, sweeter, and more complete than any grand celebration in the city could ever bring. On the porch, the family gathered as if sharing warmth through their closeness. Mija cleared away the teacups still warm from earlier, smiling quietly as she watched her children. Hung's mother sat beside Hoài Ca, gently fanning her with a bamboo fan, afraid the expectant mother might get too warm and feel tired. Each time the breeze brushed Hoài Ca's cheek, she could feel the tenderness, a tenderness she never imagined she would receive from this woman. San, as always, moved non-stop, sometimes carrying Tony, sometimes playing hide and seek with him so he wouldn't crawl all over the yard. Tony's laughter mixed with the conversation of the adults, blending with the sound of the wind brushing the roof, creating an atmosphere so warm that anyone passing by would instantly recognize this as a real home. Hùng sat close to Hoài Ca, his hand holding hers. His palm was rough, the hand of a man used to hard work, yet every gentle squeeze felt like a strong wall shielding her from the world. No explanations, no vows were needed. That single touch was enough to say that she would never have to face anything alone again. He tilted his head, gazing into her eyes as if wanting to carve this moment into memory forever. His voice lowered, honest and steady enough to slow the entire world around them. From today on, you're my wife. Not just the woman living with me, but the woman I choose. The one I want to walk beside for the rest of my life. The words echoed through the late afternoon, not dramatic, not grand, but powerful enough to make Hoài Ca's heart tremble. In the past, she might have burst into tears. But now, with all storms left behind, she simply leaned her head onto his shoulder, safe, trusting, and complete. A soft smile appeared on her lips, gentle like the fading sunlight. Hùng saw that smile and knew. At last, the girl who had endured so much had found the place she belonged. Inside her belly, the baby stirred faintly. Not strongly, just enough for Hoài Ca to pause. She placed her hand over her stomach, smoothing it tenderly, her eyes softening. She knew the little one was feeling the joy of their parents too, feeling the warmth that wrapped around the small wooden home that day. The sun slowly dipped, spreading a layer of silk-like orange across the yard. The final rays touched their faces as they leaned against each other, making the moment so beautiful it felt as if time had stopped. Hùng looked at Hoài Ca. Hoài Ca looked back. No words were spoken, yet everything was said through their eyes. All the hardships they went through, were worth it for this single moment. And then, in the quiet of dusk, on that small wooden porch, surrounded by the people they loved most, Hoài Ca felt something she once only dared to dream of. A complete wedding. Not perfect by the world standards, but perfect in the way her heart needed most. Filled with love, forgiveness, and a home where she could place her future. A real wedding after all the years she believed she would never have won. This afternoon came to a close under the last golden rays spilling across the wooden porch. Hoài Ca and Hung's wedding wasn't loud, wasn't lavish, but it was filled to the brim with love, like a gift that fate finally decided to return after years of testing them. Watching the two sit side by side, fingers intertwined, their eyes calm and full of peace, anyone could see. Happiness doesn't need to be grand. It just needs the right person at the right time, and that is enough. But life never pauses at a beautiful moment. Tomorrow still waits with its own set of challenges. Family matters, parenting, shadows of the past, and new turning points no one can predict. Today's story ends here. Thank you for staying until the very end. Thank you for caring, for walking alongside Hoài Ca through this long journey. Please leave a blessing for the newlyweds. And remember to catch the next episode, where a new shift is just beginning to unfold after this heartfelt wedding. See you in the next video. Wishing everyone a peaceful evening.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình đang làm video về câu chuyện của mình với Hoài Ca và Hùng. Bữa nay do một số công việc nên là mình không có làm video nhanh được. Ô, Sơn ơi, này được rồi đó, ấy đi, ấy tải kênh khác lên đi. Trời ơi, cái trái này nó cứ có nếp nhăn vậy ta. Mấy xíu tuổi rồi đã có nếp nhăn rồi. Vì do cái sẹo ở đây này, nhìn nó tưởng là nếp nhăn ở trán nên thực ra đây là cái sẹo mà mọi người này. Sẹo từ hồi còn bé mới sinh luôn này. Mấy cái sẹo ở đây với ở đây. Sẹo hồi bé bị thủy đậu. Đố mọi người biết mình đang làm gì. Bye bye mọi người.